The land worth trillions nobody wants to live in. Look at a map of Russia. Really look at it. It stretches across 11 time zones, from the edge of Europe all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It is, by a significant margin, the largest country on Earth. And somewhere buried inside that landmass is one of the greatest paradoxes in modern geography. Russia is sitting on an estimated $75 trillion worth of natural resources. That figure's not a typo. It dwarfs the United States, which comes in second place at $45 trillion. Russia has the world's largest proven reserves of natural gas. It is a top producer of gold, diamonds, nickel, and palladium. Beneath its frozen soil lie rare earth metals that the entire global technology industry is desperately competing to secure. And yet, the region holding most of this wealth, like Siberia and the Russian Far East, is emptying out. The population has been declining for decades. People are not moving in, they're leaving. And the ones who stay describe their existence not as living, but as surviving. So the question isn't why nobody wants to live there. The question is, why has Russia never made it worth their while? There is an invisible line running through Russia that most people have never heard of. The Ural Mountains stretch over 1,500 miles from the Arctic Ocean down toward the Caspian Sea, and they divide the country into two entirely different worlds. West of the Urals sits 23% of Russia's territory and about 75% of its population. Cities, industry, infrastructure, political power. Everything that makes Russia function as a modern state is concentrated here. East of the Urals is a different story entirely. That side accounts for 77% of Russia's landmass. It holds the overwhelming majority of the country's natural wealth, and only about a quarter of the population lives there. It's a share that keeps shrinking with every passing census. You might assume the cold is responsible, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Siberia is a place of genuine extremes. The town of Oymyakon in the Sakha Republic holds the record for the coldest permanently inhabited settlement on Earth, with temperatures recorded as low as -90 degrees Fahrenheit. Schools there only close when it drops below -67. The average daily high for the entire year hovers just above freezing. Only Antarctica gets colder on its worst days. But here's the thing, cold alone has never stopped people from settling somewhere, not when there's enough money involved. Alaska is brutally cold. The Yukon Gold Rush of the late 1800s brought tens of thousands of settlers into conditions that should have turned them around immediately. They came anyway, because the reward was worth the suffering. Siberia has rewards that make the Yukon look modest. So why hasn't the same thing happened? The answer starts not with geography, but with history, and specifically with how Russia came to possess Siberia in the first place. Siberia was never a natural extension of the Russian state. It was a colonial acquisition and an almost accidental one. Russian adventurers pushed east of the Urals originally to secure defensible frontiers against Mongol and Tatar invasions. But as they moved further, they found something that changed their plans entirely: fur. The world was in the middle of a cooler climatic period called the Little Ice Age, and the thick pelts of Siberian wildlife, like Arctic foxes, sables, lynx, otters, were settling at enormous profits in European markets. Russia's czars understood the value immediately and began annexing the territory. The locals were forced to provide regular fur tributes. The wealth flowed east to west, from the frozen wilderness to the imperial capitals. Siberia, from the very beginning, was designed to be extracted from, not invested in. That arrangement has never fundamentally changed. The fur trade eventually lost its dominance, but the extractive logic underneath it did not. What replaced fur were oil, gas, gold, and minerals. What stayed the same was the direction the profits traveled, away from the people actually living on top of the resources, toward the center of power. The Soviet period brought people to Siberia, but not voluntarily. Stalin understood what was buried beneath the permafrost and had a simple, brutal solution for how to develop it. Experts estimate that 18 million people were sent to labor camps, known as gulags, during his time in power. They were scattered across Siberia to mine gold, build roads, and extract resources under conditions that killed an enormous number of them. The city of Norilsk today, which is one of the most industrial significant cities in the entire world, was built almost entirely by Gulag prisoners in the 1930s. It sits 1,800 miles northeast of Moscow, in the heart of the Arctic. Around 250,000 imprisoned laborers died building it. And yet, the city that exists today produces 40% of the world's palladium, a metal that goes into the device you're almost certainly using to watch this right now. Norilsk also sits on significant reserves of nickel, a critical material for electric vehicle batteries, and copper. It is, by any measure, one of the most resource-rich urban areas on the planet. It is also, by most measures, one of the most miserable places to live in Russia. The city is so polluted that in 2016, the Daldikon River turned bright red from a chemical spill at a nearby factory. Locals report black and red snow. They describe a persistent haze they call the blue fog that irritates their throats. Some claim to have learned to identify different industrial gases by taste: copper sweet, nickel something else entirely. The buildings in the city are literally sinking as warming temperatures melt the permafrost beneath their foundations. And critically, Norilsk is not connected to the rest of Russia by road or rail. The locals call their city an island. The mainland, to them, is the rest of Russia. Getting in or out means flying or taking a ship through Arctic waters. This is not an accident. It is a consequence of the same logic that has always governed Siberia. Moscow extracts, Moscow does not invest. Contrast this with what the United States did with Alaska. Alaska is cold. It is remote. It presents enormous logistical challenges. And yet, once the strategic and economic value of the territory became clear, the American government committed to it. A highway connecting Alaska to the contiguous United States was completed in 1942. Oil discovery in 1968 triggered the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, which now funds stable governance across the entire state. The federal military presence of 9 bases brings jobs and ensures continued infrastructure investment. Alaska even has a universal basic income of sorts. The Alaska Permanent Fund distributes between $1,000 and $2,000 annually to every resident from oil revenues. The result is that Alaska's population grew by over 23,000 between the 2010 and 2020 censuses. Meanwhile, the population of Russia's Far East has declined by roughly 20% since the Soviet Union collapsed. The Siberian Federal District has fallen by 10% in roughly the same period. The people who can leave are leaving. Part of the reason is infrastructure or the profound lack of it. Russia's road and railway networks tell the story clearly. West of the Urals, the country is reasonably well connected. East of the Urals, there's essentially one major highway running along the southern edge of Siberia, the Trans-Siberian Highway, and one railway shadowing roughly the same route. The further north you go, the thinner the connections become, until entire cities exist with no road access at all. The Trans-Siberian Highway is the third longest road in the world, spanning nearly 6,800 miles between St. Petersburg and Vladivostok. But length is not the same as quality. Once you cross the Urals heading east, road conditions deteriorate sharply. Rain, not just ice, turns long stretches into muddy obstacles. Surface infrastructure along the route is so sparse that travel guides advise drivers to prepare to camp out or stay in strangers' homes. A journey along the highway's full length can take a month or more. And this underdevelopment is not simply a matter of neglect or lack of funds. There's a political logic to it. Keeping Siberia poorly connected makes it easier to control. Isolated populations are easier to govern from a distance. Difficult roads make it harder for independent journalists to reach regions where things the government would prefer to remain invisible are happening. By the end of 2023, 6 of the 10 Russian regions with the highest military mortality rates from the war in Ukraine were east of the Urals. Men from the Republic of Buryatia, a remote region in Russia's Far East, were 75 times more likely to be killed in action than their counterparts in Moscow, despite Moscow having a population 13 times larger. Mass funerals are easier to obscure when the nearest major city is a week's drive away. Moscow has noticed the population problem and attempted responses. In 2014, financial incentives were introduced with no land, income, or property taxes for 5 years. In 2016, Putin began offering a hectare of free land to any Russian citizen willing to settle in the Far East for at least 5 years. None of it is working. Migration data between 2014 and 2018 showed that the fastest growing regions of Russia were nearly all west of the Urals. The resources in the ground are extraordinary. The conditions above the ground push people away faster than any incentive can pull them back. A kindergarten teacher from the town of Chersky, speaking to the Moscow Times in 2011, put it in terms that no government report ever would. "We don't live here, we merely survive. It's impossible to live here. We need to get away." That sentence captures something that maps and GDP figures do not. Siberia is not uninhabited because it's cold. It is emptying out because for 3 centuries, every system governing it has been designed to take from it and from the people in it, rather than build anything worth staying for. The resources are real. The wealth is real. The potential, by any honest accounting, is staggering. But a place can only be extracted from for so long before the people with a choice start making it. If this video changed how you think about global power, make sure to subscribe to our channel. It helps more people find this video. And if you thought this was interesting, wait until you see this next.